It's often asked that is Jainism an offshoot of Hinduism, or is it a sect within Hinduism? How exactly is Jainism different from Hinduism or Buddhism? And also that do Jains worship Mahavir or Mahavira? To answer some of these basic questions on Jainism, I recently was discussing this with a group of people, and I thought I'll share it with the larger public as well. So, uh, uh, Mahavir was born a little before the Buddha, while the Buddha was the founder of Buddhism. Mahavir was not the founder of Jainism. He was the 24th great teacher, or as the Jains call him, the Tirthankar in the Jain tradition, and uh, so he was the 24th great teacher in the present era, and in the present era of millions of years of each era consists of millions of years in the Jain history. In the present era, it was founded, the Jain tradition was founded, social system was founded by the first Tirthankar, and his name was Rishabh, or as Jains also call him, Adinath. So Adinath or Rishabh was the first Tirthankar, Mahavir was the 24th Tirthankar, but 24th Tirthankar happens after first Tirthankar, and in between there are millions of years of time duration. So it's a huge time span we are talking about. So Jains, what it all means is that Jains like to imagine or like to believe that that Buddhism may have been started by the Buddha, but Jain tradition itself was not founded by Mahavir. It's an eternal system, it's an eternal tradition, and in the present era, it was started by Rishabh, the first Tirthankar. But for every era, every time cycle, there will be a new set of 24 Tirthankars. And for the present era, Rishabh was the first, and 24th was Mahavir. Okay, the key difference between Hinduism, Jainism, and Buddhism, the key difference, especially in between Hinduism and Jainism, is that while most Hindus believe in a god or goddess that may be imagined as a creator, a preserver, or destroyer of the universe, Jainism rejects any such god or goddess. For Jains, universe is an eternal phenomenon. As I just mentioned, Jainism itself is imagined as an eternal tradition. The universe also is imagined as an eternal phenomenon. Time is imagined also as an eternal, endless cycle that continues to continue forever. Universe was never created. Will never be destroyed. So there is no creator nor a destroyer of the universe. That's the Jain philosophy. So for Jains, universe is an eternal phenomenon, never created, never to be destroyed. It is a self-sustained, self-managed phenomenon that runs on the principle of cause and effect. That can be also correlated with karma and reincarnation. So the karma philosophy, the karma principle in Jain tradition is similar to Hinduism and Buddhism. They also accept karma philosophy, but Jains describe karma as particles that pollute the soul. For each soul to attain moksha, it must rely on its own efforts, purusharth, to cleanse off these karma particles. Mahavir, like the Buddha, was born as a prince in a royal family, but renounced his royal life at the age of 30 and became an ascetic. For next 12 years, from the age of 30 to 42, he practiced meditation to the extent that all hardships became negligible for him. People tortured him to the extent of piercing his ears with nails and throwing stones at him, but they could never disturb his meditation. And for those 12 years, he is believed to have practiced a complete silence vow. He would remain silent for all these years. And his intake of food and water was also at a minimum level. So there are mentions in the scriptures that out of 12 years, he ate probably just for 1 year. Not so he didn't remain hungry or thirsty for 11 years continuously, but he would go on hungry or thirsty for months together, and then he will take very little food or water, and then will go again for another series of fasts and meditations and so on. So an extreme level of concentration, austerities, and penance, and all that led to at when he became 42, around his age of 42, he became omniscient, and what or how Jains call it, Keval Gyan. So all he discovered was that focused on his soul so much that he discovered that his real identity is not his body, his name, his age, or his human condition, but his soul is his only true identity. And soul is, in its most pure basic form, it's nothing but omniscience. Soul, when it attains that omniscient stage, or Keval Gyan, it attains the complete knowledge of the entire universe, timeless knowledge, knowledge that is beyond time and beyond space. That kind of knowledge, that kind of omniscience, Mahavir achieved when he was 42. So he became omniscient, but that's not cannot be equated with moksha, because he was still alive, he still had a body, he still had a name, he still had a age and time span to cover. So he became omniscient, but did not achieve moksha yet. He left because he still had the karma of his name, age, and body. So for Jain tradition, even those are considered karma particles, karma that are still to be shed. So finally, at the age of 72, he left his body, and all the remaining karma were also completely dissolved, because he left his body, his name, his age, his time span, his all the remaining uh, passive karma particles also destroyed, also disappeared completely from his soul. And at that point, Jains believe that he achieved moksha. That was the Diwali night, as which Hindus also celebrate. So on the Diwali day or Diwali night, he achieved the moksha, and then Jain moksha state is the last frontier of the universe, where the soul remains eternally blissful and detached forever. So soul remains in its omniscient stage forever, in the last layer of the universe. So Jains imagine the shape of the universe in such a way that the last layer of the universe, or the last uppermost floor of the universe, if you will, that's where all the liberated souls, or how Jains call it, Siddha state or Arihant state. At that final stage, the soul remains at the topmost layer of the universe. It never comes back. So there is no avatar or avatar or reincarnation happening in Jainism. Souls, when they achieve moksha, they are completely detached, they're completely gone to that last frontier of the universe, and they never return. So for Jains, Mahavir and other Tirthankars are merely role models, not the provider of any materialistic or even spiritual gift. So Jains cannot ask for moksha by praying to Mahavir, because Mahavir is completely detached, he is completely gone, he has dissolved, destroyed all his bondages, relationships, connections with any other being in the universe. So he is completely detached. So Jains cannot even ask for any spiritual gifts or spiritual blessings from Mahavir. So Mahavir is not a god of Jainism. Mahavir is just a role model. Mahavir is just a role model. So Jains must depend to achieve their own moksha. Jains living in the universe right now, they must depend on their own individual efforts to achieve the moksha that Mahavir also achieved. So what interests me in Jainism or Hinduism or Buddhism is that all three have really unique contributions to the world thought. For example, Hinduism gave us the concept of Brahman that unites the entire universe in a single transcendental reality that is hidden behind the materialistic phenomena we see in the world. Jainism gave us the idea of non-violence that led to the largest number of vegetarians that have always existed in India. The value of vegetarianism is only recently being recognized in the West, as we know, in America and so on. But Jains must have inspired the larger Indian population to also turn towards vegetarianism. And the most, I guess, probably the most celebrated example of becoming a vegetarian is the example of the Emperor Akbar, the Mughal Emperor Akbar, who also apparently became vegetarian at least for a few days every month, or I think once a month, he also became vegetarian. And in his royal kitchen, no meat would be cooked or served on that particular day. So that probably happened because some Jain ascetics went to the court of Akbar, and they had this discussion with Akbar, and Akbar liked this idea of non-violence and vegetarianism and embraced it. So similarly, Buddhism gave us the most developed techniques of meditation and pranayam, the breathing techniques, the phrases like take a deep breath or live in this moment or mindfulness that we now take for granted. We use it in our common discussions, these kind of phrases, but most likely Buddha must have been one of the first, if not the first person who must have practiced these meditation techniques, breathing techniques, living in the moment, mindfulness, take a deep breath, these kind of things, breathing and meditation, how they're interlinked. Buddha must have been one of the first, at least, if not the first, practitioner and preacher of these kind of techniques. Similarly, so all these three unique messages from these three Indic traditions remain relevant and important to the world today. The Hindu concept of oneness of the universe and the Jain concept of nonviolence are most urgently required today to save the planet from ultimate ecological destruction. The two biggest reasons for ecological destruction, as we know now with many scientific uh, reports and papers published in top scientific journals, that these are the two biggest reasons for ecological destruction: overconsumption and pollution of natural resources in the form of burning fossil fuels, including in automobiles, and consuming meat. Carbon dioxide emissions, CO2 emission from raising cattle for meat consumption and from vehicles, both widely practiced in so-called developed world, has led to the climate change that has endangered the entire planet's survival today. Only the reverence and respect for other species, plants, air, water, and the Mother Earth that Indic traditions teach can save the planet. The current way of economic consumption and economic so-called development is a sure path to ultimate destruction, as we now have seen in many scientific reports and papers published across the globe now. So similarly, the ultimate happiness has only moved away from our practice of consumption and materialism that we practice in much of the urban world, both in the West and the East now. And only the Buddhist teaching of mindfulness and meditation and cutting down our desires and living a simple life, as most famously exemplified in our past 2 centuries, probably by Mahatma Gandhi. Those are the teachings and traditions that Gandhi exemplified can save the planet at every level: ecological level, health-wise, and living together harmoniously, and so on. So I wanted to share some of these ideas and hope to do more so.